Well, welcome to another chat with Tim. We're doing a little series on the stages of development as laid out by Erikson. And it was the very first video I did in the reparenting series just to show the natural development of a child and the key pieces that need to get learned at different stages in a child's life if a child's to develop in a healthy way. And so if they learn that important piece at that stage of life, then there's a whole bunch of favorable outcomes that are going to follow. But if they don't, then there's unfavorable outcomes. And what our point has been is that those unfavorable outcomes aren't what we would call permanent verdicts, like the damage is undoable or unhealable. But in recovery, it's so important for many people to go back to that stage and repair that damage, learn the tools they never learned before they can really heal properly. And what I've seen so many people learn all these different tools about all kinds of different things in recovery, and they grow a little bit, but they don't deal with that disrupted area from early in childhood that affected the rest of their development. And so all those tools that they're learning in recovery only go so far, and they kind of stop in recovery until they heal that damage. They have to go back to that disrupted developmental phase and repair that key foundational piece of building a healthy life. And so today I want to look at the next two phases because they're kind of connected, but they're different. So the first is the second year of the child. So this is now kind of very much infant toddler still stage, but the crisis is called autonomy versus shame and doubt. And so you can imagine that at that age, a child is beginning to realize that they are a person. They're separate from other people. They're an individual. That's part of what's beginning to develop at this stage. And so if they begin to have that encouraged, if they begin to understand that more and more, then they develop a sense of self-control, of agency, of learning how to meet their needs, of being able to be authentic, and that is huge. That's validated, and so they develop a positive self-image, a positive identity. It's such a crucial stage in a child's development, beginning to figure out that they're an individual, that they can be authentic even though they're unique, they're not like anybody else, they're autonomous, they can meet their own needs. Crucial stage. But what happens if that's disrupted through neglect, through abuse, the areas of complex trauma? They end up feeling shame. And we're going to talk about this because to me, this is the core piece of damage that then is done. So last week we looked at kind of the two foundational pieces that get damaged. This one is tied in with that, and it's the shame belief, which then means a negative self-image, low self-esteem, and it takes a long time to deal with this. But before I develop that, I want to go on to the next one because they're kind of tied together. And that's now third to fifth year. And so the crisis is called initiative versus guilt or false guilt. So this is where a child now is beginning to try new things. They're curious, they're exploring. But as they do that, they fail. They don't walk perfectly the first time, ride their bike perfectly, tie their shoes perfectly. Everything is about curiosity, exploration, but they're learning through failure, and through it, they're understanding their abilities, who they are. All of this is a crucial time as a child, through play, is exploring their world, but also beginning to understand themselves. So what happens if that is disrupted? So every time they fail, they get punished for it. They get criticized for it. Every time they try new things, they get criticized. They end up with a sense of guilt and inadequacy, a sense of failure and a fear of failure. And again, that's what complex trauma produces. So let me bring these two together and make some things clear, because the question I get asked all the time is, what's the difference between shame and guilt? And I want to say up front that in our culture today, those two have been confused. And so sometimes what is truly guilt, people say, oh, that's shame, when it's really guilt. So let me see if I can make the distinction and clarify the difference between the two. So shame is about who I am. Guilt is about what I do. So guilt is related to activity, to action. Shame is related to being. So shame is when a child is neglected or abused, and they conclude it must be because I am bad. Something's wrong with me. I am not good enough. I am lovable. So who I am at the very core is causing people to neglect me or abuse me because I'm not good enough. So most people, and this is where, to me, this shame topic, and we've done a whole series on it. I encourage you to watch it. To me, it's a critical series. Most people, if you ask them if they have shame, they say no. And the reason they do that is because they think of shame as a feeling. So if they don't feel shame, they go, I don't have shame. But I think what's important to understand is that, yes, shame, there's an emotion of shame. But shame, first of all, is a belief. And that emotion comes to certain people because they believe certain things. And it's a core belief about your identity. And so it's the child's belief early on that the reason I'm being neglected is because I'm not good enough. But what's important to understand about that belief is that most people aren't even aware that they believe it. It operates in the subconscious. So you can have somebody who's a movie star, popular, nice house, lots of money, and they go, somebody asks them, do you have shame? And they go, no, I feel good about myself. But deep down, they're still acting on a belief that they're not good enough, and they're trying to prove that they're good enough. So it's a subtle thing that most people often aren't aware of. So that's shame, and we're going to come to kind of where we go in healing it. But if, again, you want more information, please watch the series on shame. But then guilt. Guilt is about your conscience being activated every time you violate love. So you lie to somebody, you hurt somebody, you betray somebody, you steal from somebody, you disrespect somebody. What I have seen is a lot of people go, shame on you. And people then think guilt is shame, when really what you're feeling is guilt. So guilt is your conscience is activated and it makes you feel uncomfortable at a conscious level. You feel, oh, I've done something wrong. Oh, I'm bad. And that's guilt. And guilt is designed to help motivate you to correct your behavior, because that's how you'll resolve that unpleasant feeling. If I stop lying, if I stop cheating, if I stop stealing, then the guilt will go away. I can resolve this by returning to loving actions. Whereas shame can't be resolved. No matter what you do to try and be better, you still get neglected, you still get abused. And so you just can't find a way to resolve the shame. So it goes deeper and deeper into denial, your subconscious, because the brain goes, I don't know how to resolve it, so let's stop thinking about it. And so it's a very, very subtle thing. But I have to take this one step further. Complex trauma produces false guilt. And this is key. And this is what I think this step by Erikson is talking about in the unfavorable outcomes. So false guilt is when you are made to feel guilty when you had done nothing wrong. You are made to feel responsible for something that you're not responsible for. So it's a common thing in complex trauma. It's a gaslighting thing where the child is made to feel they've done something wrong when they haven't. So let me give you some examples. So your dad is angry and he somehow says it's your fault. Now, you may have done stuff that caused him to get angry, but he chose to act on that anger. That anger is his emotion. So you were just being a child, but he's blaming you. Mom is unhappy. She blames you. It's your fault. She's so sad. So the child now is walking around feeling guilty for dad's emotions, for mom's emotions. Or dad and mom are getting a divorce, and somehow you feel it's your fault, that you're too much of a burden as a child. And so you feel false guilt. You can't see from a child's perspective that they've got issues, that they have problems, that it's their fault, that they're not dealing with those problems properly. You assume it's your fault. And so what then happens in that child is, as they get older, anybody's painful emotions, they go, oh, maybe I did something wrong. Anybody's failure, maybe I did something wrong. So now, anytime anybody's struggling, they go to feeling guilty. Some grew up where parents were poor and children were a bit of a burden to try and feed them and clothe them. And so the children is feeling guilty for being alive because it's causing their parents so much hardship. Some, it goes so far that every child has 12 needs. And the child would express those needs, which they should, but then their parents told them they were being selfish for having those needs. So now every time they have a need, they feel guilty. Some, if you relaxed in your household growing up, you've been working hard and you relaxed, you were told you were being lazy or you were being selfish. And it could be because they worked all the time, they were poor, they just thought you should give, and relax was somehow wrong. And so you grew up, every time you relax, you feel guilty. And then now today, if you do healthy self-care, so you've given, served, loved, now you just say, I got to take a minute to relax, I got to take care of my own needs, you feel guilty. You feel that you're doing something wrong, that you're being selfish. That can go then into, you can see how this kind of, the ramifications of it, when there's an unmet need in somebody else that you're made to feel that you should be responsible for. So if mom is sad or dad is angry, they're responsible to take care of their own needs, but you're made to feel that you should fix mom's sadness. You should fix dad's anger. And if you don't, you're doing something wrong. But then that can go even farther for some people. So I've worked with so many clients who've had a brother or sister who was sexually abused, and they knew about it, and they felt they should have stopped it somehow. And now they feel guilty for all the problems that have come from their sibling's sexual abuse. Or their sibling commits suicide or gets into drugs, and their life is a terrible mess, and they feel it's their fault, that they should have done something to prevent it. And then there's the times where they see mom and dad being angry or sad, and they try to make them feel better, but it doesn't work, and so they just feel terrible guilt around that. Or they have people that ask them to do something and they say no because they know it's not their responsibility. The other person really should do it, or they're just too busy. And then they feel guilty for saying no to a request or setting a boundary with somebody. So they're feeling guilty all the time for doing healthy things, saying no when it's appropriate to say no, setting boundaries when it's appropriate to set boundaries. And then what comes out of this is they now set unrealistic expectations for themselves. So they think that having needs means you're bad. For not doing something perfectly, you failed. For not learning quickly enough, you failed. For not reading somebody's mind, you failed. For crying when you're hurting, you failed. So because of how they were responded to as a child, when they cried, when they didn't learn something quickly enough, if they didn't do something perfectly, they now set an unrealistic standard for themselves. And so every time they fail, every time they cry, every time they don't read somebody's mind, they go to guilt. Every time they don't know what to do in a situation, they go to guilt. And then for some people, sadly, they feel guilt that they're a girl rather than a boy because their parents always wanted a boy. Or they feel guilty for being alive because mom and dad weren't planning on them, didn't really want another child, or mom died in childbirth, or life got really hard for their parents after they were born, and they feel it's all their fault. So one of the things that happens for many people with false guilt who have these unrealistic standards is you hear them frequently say, I should be doing this, I should have thought of that, I should have done that. So it's always, I should have. And that points to a standard that often is very unrealistic. So what comes out of this for so many people is that guilt is their default setting. Something in them now needs to feel guilty. They felt guilty for so long. They were constantly made to feel guilty. That's their normal. That's the way they think it should be. And so their brain now looks for things that actually feed that guilt, that keep that guilt alive. And so what then begins to happen is they must find something wrong with everything they do. So they could do something really well, but now they try to find, oh, my motive wasn't perfect. I was a bit selfish in my motive. So now they're overanalyzing everything they do, looking for something wrong because they need to feel guilt. And then if they've analyzed everything and they can't find anything, then they feel guilty for not feeling guilty. They feel maybe they're proud, they're missing stuff, and it just becomes this vicious prison that a monster must be felt. What goes with that now is a second thing, and that is that they're very hard on themselves. That's also a default setting. So they need to feel guilty, which means they need to be hard on themselves about everything, to find fault with themselves in everything, to always make sure they're not good enough, that they're feeling guilty about everything. And sadly, it's not just families that can do this on children and make them feel guilty for stuff that they're not really guilty for. Church groups, support groups, other organizations where people basically in positions of authority operate off of a set of beliefs, values, where they must look good, they must feel good, but then they judge everybody under them that is messing up their selfish behavior, that's making them look bad, that's not doing things according to their rules. Unrealistic standards causes this to be repeated, not just in the family, but all over the place. So, shame, guilt, false guilt. 3 powerful things that, if allowed to grow, just have ramifications into all of life, mess up relationships, keep people really in a prison that's very negative. They just do tons of damage. So what do you do to heal? So let's just look at healing from shame. And again, the series we go into detail, but I would just say number 1, because shame operates normally at the subconscious level, take a course so that you grow in self-awareness. So like our LIFT course, we do a ton of work in helping people become aware of shame and many, many subtle layers to it. A lot of people want to heal shame by just doing the emotions. I just want to feel better about myself. So let's do things to make me feel better about myself. What they don't realize is that deep, deep down, they still reject parts of themselves. They think the reason they were neglected was because they were too sensitive. They're too sad. They're too angry. And they hate those parts of themselves. Healing shame starts with accepting yourself. Now, that's not an emotion. That's a choice. I choose to accept that I'm an introvert. I choose to accept that I'm a sensitive person. The feelings might come later where I feel good about myself, but I start by, I'm not going to beat myself up anymore or reject myself for that. Then I go to, I must also accept my past. Yes, I was neglected. Yes, I was abused. I can't go back. I can't choose my parents. I can't have a different childhood. So I need to accept that and work through how it affected me. It does me no good to just be bitter and angry about it. I got to get to a point where I go, okay, this happened. This is how it affected me. Now let's see how I can change and grow because of it. Then the next thing is treat yourself with respect. So shame, when it is triggered, so that deep belief is triggered. So somebody then doesn't hear you or disrespects you or something and triggers, I'm not good enough. See, that just proves it. Then you get the emotion of shame, and that's in your limbic brain. And your emotion of shame causes you to think, I must treat myself based on the way that I'm feeling. So I don't feel good enough. So I need to treat myself as not good enough. I need to judge myself. I need to be hard on myself. What you have to do is go, no. When limbic brain gets triggered and shame gets triggered, it brings shame lies. I'm not good enough. Those are not accurate. Those are distortions. I need to get back to my cortex and treat myself based on what I know is true. I do have value. I am just as valuable as everybody else. So I need to treat myself with respect, even though I'm not feeling respect for myself at the moment. So you act your way to a new feeling. I will treat myself with respect because it's right, even though I don't feel it. And I will keep doing it until I start feeling respect for myself. And then the next thing is pick people who will give you an accurate mirror of who you are. So what happened in complex trauma is the mirrors weren't accurate. They were saying it's your fault. You're not good enough. The reason we're neglecting you and abusing you. And so you have to get accurate mirrors who let you know your value, let you know who you are. And that means boundaries with some of the inaccurate mirrors. What I've seen over and over again is so many people have been healing their shame so well, and then all of a sudden they go back to family. And they come back from a weekend with family and they feel terrible about themselves again because the family, as an inaccurate mirror, just undid all the growth they had been doing in healing from the shame. And now all of a sudden they just feel crappy again. And so sometimes you just have to, like a greenhouse, provide a protective, safe space from some of that negative messaging until you get strong enough to be able to handle it. And that means boundaries often with the people that have inflicted those shame wounds. Now let me go to healing false guilt. What you need to understand is false guilt mistrained your conscience. So your conscience is no longer guided by love. Your conscience is guided by your parents' value system, which was wrong, which was distorted. And so you have to retrain that conscience so it's now guided by love only. That takes a lot of work. And so every time you feel guilt, you have to stop, pause, and go, is this true guilt or false guilt? If it's true guilt, I can see, oh yeah, I violated love here. Here's what I need to do to fix it. But if it's false guilt, okay, I don't need to go to beating myself up. I need to just say, you know what? I didn't do anything wrong. Get back to my cortex and just say, the feeling will pass, but I'm not going to give into it and start beating myself up. You got to do that over and over again for quite a period of time before your conscience begins to be retrained. So I hope you realize for many people, this is very hard to do, especially when false guilt and guilt has been a default setting for years. Your brain just gravitates toward wanting to feel guilty. And so to change that to a thing where I'm okay, I am not doing anything wrong, and have peace and contentment, that almost feels weird and wrong to your brain initially. So you have to kind of transition to this new healthy normal when your old normal has been unhealthy. And so you got to process over and over again every time you feel the guilt emotion. Is it healthy guilt or unhealthy guilt? And you probably will need somebody to help you with that initially, because when guilt is triggered, you're just going to hear the old messages which feel like the truth. And you're going to need somebody to help you go, no, that's not the truth. So, like I said at the beginning, so many people in recovery learn lots of good tools, but they don't deal with these core issues that happen when they were very young. And this shame, guilt, and false guilt, they are massive things that can just mess up your life for years to come. So I just hope this helps you identify something that you may need to go back to. And you may need to do some work here to bring some real healing if you're really going to advance in your recovery.